Michigan has another commitment in its 2022 class. 3-star outside linebacker Micah Pollard from Jacksonville, Florida. 6'3", 200 pounds. Commits to Michigan. Makes his commitment public here on Monday. So the Wolverines continue to add here. Had quite a run of commitments over the last few weeks. So EJ, we're going to break him down as a player in just a second. But first, let's talk about how this happened. This is a recruitment that you've been on top of from the beginning. All the twists and the turns. It looked like at one point he was going to commit coming off of a visit. Then he didn't. Looked like maybe he was leaning towards Auburn and then back to Michigan. And, again, you've been right on the pulse of this thing from the beginning. So how did this all play out? How does he end up a Wolverine?
Yeah, so it did have a few dips here in the last month or so. Basically, Michigan jumped on him early and was the definite leader. Basically, right from the bat, he is the nephew of former Michigan great, still current Michigan great, Braylon Edwards. So he has that tie. He still has a lot of family in Michigan. On top of that, George Hilo was his lead recruiter. Hilo is a great recruiter in the Jacksonville area. He's from Jacksonville, so he has a lot of ties there. So it all just made sense. Going into his official visit on June 4th, there was a lot of optimism that Pollard was going to shut things down and commit to Michigan. In fact, we even had a commitment story ready for Pollard for that weekend. We actually did expect him to commit that weekend. So obviously days go by and he didn't commit. And I think when he didn't commit, and I think the staff kind of said, you know what, you still have the opportunity to commit. If you want to explore other options, go ahead. We're also going to explore some other options. So there was kind of a weird couple of weeks where, it didn't have the same vibe. And I'm not exactly sure why Pollard didn't commit that weekend like he was expected to. But after those couple of weeks, he started to trend towards Auburn. And I definitely believe he was going to commit to Auburn as well. He made an official visit there. And I know people close to the Auburn program felt really, really confident that Pollard was going to jump on board. And so Pollard always wanted to make a decision in July. With the decision nearing, I think Michigan, once they realized, hey, Auburn's taking command of this recruitment, they kind of returned up the heat. They re-engaged and made a strong push. And I believe it was last Tuesday that Michigan had a big group call. Jim Harbaugh, Hilo, defensive analyst Ryan Osborne, who has been leading the way with edge rushers, defensive coordinator Mike McDonald. Everybody jumped on this call. And Pollard and his father had some, questions about things that all recruits have had questions about in regards to Michigan, just kind of what the new defense is going to look like, what's the stability of the program. And I think Michigan did a fantastic job of answering all those questions. And so they actually turned the tide on that call. And Pollard said, you know what, I actually have felt the most comfortable with Michigan this entire cycle. I'm going to go ahead and commit. So he gave a silent commit on that call that night and obviously made things public. I put in a feature cast that same night. I actually got a call literally right after Pollard committed, and then everybody else followed over the weekend. But that day that I put in my future cast ahead of everybody else was the day that Pollard gave the staff his commitment.
Yeah, I feel like you were kind of running circles around people with this one, but obviously all the intel was over at thewolverine.com, so use the promo code BLUE60 to join us over there to get all the updates in real time. So we said outside linebacker. That's what he's listed as on Rivals. But, Michigan has some maybe different plans for him, and he has some different plans for himself at the next level, possibly at the edge rusher spot, the buck linebacker spot. Has positional flexibility, obviously. Where do you see him at the next level? What are the plans Michigan has for him?
Michigan told him he's a buck linebacker. So essentially he's going to rush off the edge, but he's also going to have the flexibility to move around, play more of a traditional outside linebacker role as well. He is different from a guy like Kevontae Henry. So even though Pollard's listed at 6'3", 200, he actually looks thicker than Henry does, who has a more skinny, lanky frame. Henry's a guy that is extremely raw from a technical standpoint. And the only thing he can really do right now is pin his ears back and get after the quarterback. He needs to add strength. He needs to add some technical parts to his game. Pollard, I think, is a more polished prospect. He might not have the super high ceiling that Henry has, but he's very well coached. He plays at a premier program in Jacksonville, Bartram Trail, which produces a number of FBS prospects that I've covered in the past as well. So he's very, very well coached at his high school. He obviously is the nephew of Braylon Edwards. His father played in the NFL, so he has bloodlines. He's grown up around the game. He's a guy that's, as technical as they come. He's gotten the best coaching. He has the family. So he's not going to need a whole lot of teaching. I think with Pollard, he has the athleticism certainly to play that edge rusher role, but because he's so smart and instinctual, I like the fact that they're telling him he can play multiple roles, and I think he's best suited there. I do think he's a little underrated as a high 3-star. I would probably give him a low 4-star. I think he's right on the cusp of that, and I think he can make a minor jump in the rankings this season. But he's just a really, really solid prospect. He's a guy that has a high floor, but still has a high enough ceiling to be excited about. And like I said, those bloodlines, the technical aspect, I think he'll be able to pick up a complicated Mike Macdonald scheme pretty quickly and have the flexibility to play all the positions, all the linebacker positions. So he's a guy that could even play some inside backer as well. So smart kid, good technical kid, great IQ, instincts. So I think Pollard just needs to keep, adding weight, adding strength, improving his flexibility. But he's a guy that Michigan fans should be really, really excited about. And always good to get a guy out of the Jacksonville area. Now you have 2 guys from the Sunshine State in Pollard and Mario Eugenio. And I know those on the Michigan side are very excited about that duo.
Definitely. So you mentioned Mario Eugenio. I was going to bring him up. He's in the fold. You also talked about Cavante Henry at more of that traditional edge rusher role at this point, especially because he's so raw in athletic, though. What might be next for Michigan here? How many spots are left at kind of that outside linebacker, edge rusher type of roles, and who are some names to know?
Yeah, so definitely you look at the trio they have right now, Eugenio, Henry, and Pollard. And the reason I brought up Henry with Pollard is I think they'll kind of be interchangeable. I think Eugenio will see a lot of time with his hand in the dirt and play a more traditional end spot while still edge rushing in certain packages. So I think with Pollard, Henry, and Eugenio, even though they were all recruited as edge rushers, the only pure edge rusher out of that trio is Henry. The other guys can do some other things. And so I think they all complement each other well. Michigan wants another guy that can just pin his ears back and get after the quarterback. So they're looking for one more edge rusher. And that's Joshua Josephs out of Georgia. He is the top target on the board right now. Michigan is pushing extremely hard for him. I've gone back and forth whether or not to put in a future cast pick for him. I think Michigan may have a slight edge coming out of his official visit in June, but he does have a couple of SEC offers. Obviously, it would be a little tough to pull him out of the Peach State, but he is the number 1 target on the board right now. He's basically the only target with Joseph Adedire going off to TCU this past week. So Joseph's far and away the number 1 guy on the board, and he's another guy like Henry, again, that can just pin his ears back, get after the quarterback, more of a pure edge rusher.
So there you have it. You can follow all of that as Michigan continues to pursue Josephs, others, different positions, Michigan football recruiting updates on the daily over at thewolverine.com. Again, that promo code is BLUE60. That gets you 60 days, a 60-day free trial to join us. Try us out. If you like it, you can continue to subscribe with us over at thewolverine.com, and we'll see everybody over there.